Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Go With Your Gut podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Dreyer, and today we have a wonderful guest and a personal friend of mine, Nicole Calhoun, and she is the founder of Calhoun Coaching, and she works with women to get their careers going and work through that. And she works with a lot of women in STEM because that is what she loves to do. She is a part of the John Maxwell team, and she is here to share some of her story with us. Nicole, do you want to give us a little intro?
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It is truly an honor. It's a privilege. So again, thank you again. So Lauren, what I do is I am a trainer and coach, and I've been certified with the John Maxwell team, but I work with women to help them reach their career goals that they're looking to reach. Um, I have a background in information technology. And so that's where the whole STEM thing comes from, because I just have a passion and a heart for women in STEM. I know that because that industry is one that's traditionally male dominated. And so sometimes it becomes a little bit hard for women to move along in the industry. And so what I do is I help the women to kind of work through the things that's needed so that they can move along in their career. And sometimes it's mindset. Like you talk about mindset all the time. You know, that's one of the things I love about you, Lauren. You know, it's one of the things I love about you. But some of it is mindset. Some of it is just they don't recognize their talents, their abilities. Some of it is just they need a plan on how to move forward to kind of work through it. And so that's in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so I don't know if I know these moments about you. I know we've talked quite a bit about these kind of subjects personally and privately. So tell me about some moments in your past, because you've made some big strides in the last couple of years for yourself. Tell me about some moments that were pivotal for you that made you decide to take that leap of faith and go with your gut and just make it happen.
Yeah, so as you know, I think throughout life we face these pivotal moments. These we say they're moments, but it seems like moments. But but there are these huge things that kind of requires us to make a decision on something, and they're very significant. And for me, once I knew what I wanted to do, I was a little scared. Like I'm sure you are more than aware of that, right? It gets scary to just kind of jump out there and say, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur, right? And so I was scared, and I was there's a period of time where you're not even sure how you're going to go about doing what it is that you want to do. And so for me, that pivotal moment happened. I had been in my career more than 25 years. Actually, I started off as a software developer. I did that for like 20 years. And then I moved more to the project side of things, the project management side of things. And there was an incident that occurred at work. At the time, I was pursuing my dream of helping women advance in their career. I wanted to empower women. And at the same time, I felt like, well, Nicole, you also want to reach a certain level within your career as far as on the job, right? And so this incident, it was really unexpected. We had a meeting and within our organization, and during the meeting, it was explained that the senior leaders were going to talk about their direct reports and what the significance of their roles were, what they offered to the organization. And so I remember thinking, as they were going through the different slides of the senior leaders and their direct reports, I remember this thought just popped in my mind. I bet I'm not going to be on that slide. And, Lauren, the only thing that I could think of why that thought popped in my mind was because I knew I was the only woman on my team. I knew that I was the only African American on my team. And I knew that I was the only person that wasn't a vice president. And now, being a woman and being African American, maybe that was something that was not a big deal, but the difference in the title, I think, as I'm talking through it, I think that may have played a role into why that thought popped in my head.
Yeah.
But ironically, the thought popped in my head and I was not on that slide. And as you can imagine, it's funny all the things you can think and all the emotions that you can go through
Yep.
in just a few seconds.
Oh, geez, yes.
Oh my goodness, because I was sad, I was upset, I was confused, I was trying to figure out what could have happened. And I was hurt. And so after about a week of trying to figure out, well, how, just trying to, how we do, we try to figure out, well, maybe this happened, or maybe that happened, or maybe this happened. And finally it just, hey, look, Nicole, you're going to have to ask. You're going to have that tough conversation. You're going to have to put on your big girl pants.
Those are hard to have.
Yes, they are. They're very hard. It's just naturally within my personality to try to smooth things over, right? And so having those tough conversations for me was hard. And so I had to ask. I had to just talk through what I experienced, right?
Right.
So, I do want to say this. I do want to make it clear that my manager at the time, he was one of my biggest supporters as far as advancing my career, as far as my passions, right? And so this in no way is meant to say to shine a negative light, because in no way, right, it is this the case. And so, but what we did, we had a very hard conversation, but it was one that was needed, about why women tend to kind of get overlooked in some things. And it was a lesson learned for me, and it was a lesson learned for him. And let me just say, he fixed it.
That's what matters.
Yes, he fixed it. But I still had the question remaining. Because it didn't fix me.
Right.
There was still something wrong. And what I found is that I didn't understand why it bothered me so bad. So I had to finally ask myself, Nicole, what do you really want?
And let me ask you this, because you know a little bit about me and my story, and that place internally, whatever, that place is so hard to be in, because you don't feel like you know what's wrong. And it's like, I don't feel right. I know I don't feel right, but I don't know why I don't feel right. Like, that is such a hard place to move out of. And even moving out of that takes guts.
You're right, Lauren. It is really hard. For me, I think it's hard because you have to face things that you're not necessarily prepared to face.
Yep.
And what I had to face was, why, Nicole, are you pushing for this promotion?
Okay.
Especially at the point when I realized, and I don't know if I missed that in the story. I was trying to get promoted, and I was going, okay. And so I had to face, Nicole, both of these are very significant things that you're trying to do, and you can't do both. And so I'm not sure that I wanted to face that up until then. And so when you talk about pivotal moment, that moment required me to face, look, Nicole, why is this a big deal for you? You know, and sometimes you don't like the answer to that question. But you know what that question did for me is it caused me to step back and ask myself another question. Well, who are you? Why are you here? I honestly believe that when we place all of our efforts into things that we are strong in, things that we have passion for, things that we value, that's when we get to see true results, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I had so that moment it required me to really do some soul searching. And you're right, it's hard. But I am so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for that moment.
And what I love that you just said, because I think there's such a hesitation for, I don't know, anybody, I feel like, to when you get to that point, and I had to do the same thing. I got to that point and said, okay, who am I? What do I want? Why am I here? And how do I want myself to go forward? Because, like, I'm not getting any younger, right? Like, let's do this. Let's be who I am here to be, regardless. And it really did for me as well take that moment of, okay, let's take a step back, figure out, what do I actually want? What do I want to do? And regardless if I know how I'm going to exactly get there, but what is it going to look like for me to move forward? Because I mean, let's be real. That's a whole unknown thing.
Yes.
And
It's
we may
scary.
think, okay, well, here's all the steps I'm going to take, but we have absolutely no idea if it's going to work out, how it's going to work out. I mean, we've got a plan in mind, and then all of a sudden life happens.
Yep.
And we're like, okay,
Yeah.
how do I pivot for this? And I mean, for me, I know there was a couple times where I had to be like, okay, Lauren, don't freeze, don't stop. And so you do have to take that step back, evaluate where you want to go, evaluate who the heck you want to be. And that's a scary place, because nobody can tell you that.
That is so true.
And that's one thing that I struggled with a lot. And I don't know if you did or not, being like, okay, I want somebody to tell me how to do this, but nobody can tell me how to move forward. I want some directions. I want an instruction manual. There is none. Like,
I know exactly what you're talking about. But you know what's funny, Lauren, is that if people gave you the instructions, you wouldn't take all the instructions.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
You know, and you know, it does. One thing I do want to say is it does help to surround yourself with people who can mentor you, who have gone before you, right?
Yep.
They still can't tell you what to do.
No.
They can also kind of help guide you and tell you their experiences, right?
Yep.
So that is very when you talk about go with your gut, because when we're going with our gut, a lot of times you are daring to do something significant.
Absolutely.
And when you're daring to do something significant, it scares people.
To death.
It doesn't just scare you. You would think it's just you that it scares, but it scares other people. And so you do need those people around you that have faced all those things that you're going to face.
Yep.
You need people who can be examples, but then you need to, like you said, you got to figure it out for yourself. You have to make the decisions for yourself. right?
So in that, in making those decisions for yourself, I know, and heck, I'm still working on all this stuff. I always will be, and I'm sure you can agree with that. What is that process like? Because like I am not IT minded in any way, but I know a lot of people who are. I'm
Mhm.
super curious though, how you faced the opposition that like your head was telling you, all the things that like shoved that red light in your face and said, Nicole, no, 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 you don't know what you're doing. You shouldn't do this. How do you process that? Because like that scared the crap out of me. I can't imagine how you dealt with that.
So, like you said, naturally being in IT and being process oriented, it could be a strength and it can be a weakness
Right.
because you're analyzing everything.
Yep.
How am I going to do this? This makes no sense. And at first, you start off anything that we start off to do. We're going to start off with what we know.
Right.
So for me, it's the analysis. For someone else, it may be something else. But the way we've traditionally done things, that's what we're going to do.
Right.
And so as we're doing that, just different things are popping up, and things that you never imagined would occur. Like you said, that the internal fear, the
Right.
opposition from within that comes from your mindset that says, this is totally crazy. How are you going to get from A to Z? Z is all the way up there. What makes you think you can get there? So then you have this process of dealing with your mindset and something that you would have never imagined, that you have to deal with your mindset to get from A to Z.
Yep.
So what I found is what's funny is I'm a part of the John Maxwell team, and one of the things that I would hear repeated, it's such a wonderful community of people that support each other. But what I would hear repeatedly was trust the process. And in my mind, I'm like, there shouldn't be a process. This needs to happen now. And when you hear that trust the process, you have no idea what people mean by it. But when you're in the midst of it, you realize, okay, I thought that going from A to Z means that I'm going to lay out my plans, like you said, Lauren.
Yeah.
And then my plans are going to go exactly how I thought. But then your plans don't go exactly how you thought. So the process is what's happening internally to you as you're working through the obstacles, the zigzags, the changes that you may need to make. You're not changing the goal, but you may be changing how you're going to get there. That
Yes.
process is that thing. And you know what, Lauren? It is a beautiful thing. It's something that we don't necessarily want to go through, but I believe that you ask, what is the process? Well, I believe that we go through a process ourselves, but then we also have our own process for dealing with what comes up, right?
Yes.
I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
And it becomes a beautiful thing, because I feel like the process that you go through as a person, it prepares you for Z.
Yeah.
So for me, sometimes it's been making sure I have the right people to reach out to. That's part of the process.
That's a great one.
Sometimes it's been doing the research. Now, again, because I am analytical, I have to stop myself from going into analysis paralysis. So that's part of the process. I have to put limits on how long I'm going to allow myself, right, to keep analyzing and looking for the perfect answer, right?
Yep.
Part of the process for me is learning and growing and applying what I'm learning, right? I think the process is different for different people.
I absolutely agree. And so I love that you were just talking about analysis paralysis because, like I was saying, I am not a technical minded person. I have learned to get there a little bit more, but I feel like that's something that people don't think about when dealing with something like this, because we go into, okay, I need to go research this. I need to go be educated so I can make an educated decision. But then, and all of that stuff is, I mean, we know I'm a personal development nerd, mindset nerd, all that stuff. And so I love learning about all that and hearing all the different ways that people have done things. But there's only so much research or whatever that you can do before it's time to say, okay, it's time to move forward. It's time to decide and take that action step instead of taking that analysis paralysis and being like, okay, like I love seeing how it's worked for other people, and I think I've done as much as I can do. Now it's time for me to put it to work.
Yes.
And that for me is absolutely something that I'm like, okay, I need to read a book on this. I need to go watch a YouTube video on this. I need to do this. I need to network with these people. And eventually it's just, okay, these people can't tell me, they can tell me, like you said, how they have done it, but they can't do it for me.
Yes.
And that has been such a thing for me is, okay, I've gone through my process. I've done what I can do. Now it's time for me to move forward with it. It's time for me to, you know, like I named the podcast, it's time for you to go with your gut and just say, I'm going to take that leap and I'm just going to do it, regardless of the whoever is in my head telling me that I shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, that voice just keeps coming back. As much as I tell it to be quiet and conquer it a lot of times, it keeps on coming back. So I have to find a new way to work through that and say, no, I'm going to keep going. Sit down and be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And so that brings me to another thing that I know about my own excuses and all the things that I've come up with. So I have also found that we don't realize when we are making the excuses as to why we can't move forward. I need to do some more research. I can't do it today because I have, whatever life happening, all of these things. And at one point it's like, okay, yes, you do have all those things going, but some people will call those context, and I do that as well. But how did you learn when it's like, okay, I'm making an excuse that I didn't know I was actually making, and how did you come to that realization so that you could then move forward and move past those?
There's several things I can get out of that question. Oh my goodness. So I have realized that I can make a very compelling argument. And if I am talking to someone who is maybe talking to me about doing something in my best interest, and I just keep giving reasons for me that seem very valid,
Right.
for why I'm not doing what I need to do. And because I can make the compelling argument and they get to the point where they just stop answering, but they have that look on their face. You know what I mean?
I know that look all too well.
I learned to pay attention to that look. And of course it has to be from someone that I value their input. But
Yeah.
I realize that when I get that I am excusing my way out of something that can be significant.
Yeah.
Yes, it may be hard. Yes, Lauren, I can give you a really good example. So you mentioned that you said I've come a long way. When I first started with career development, I used to put out these videos. And Lauren, I can't tell you, they were like these 3-minute videos, and I really do want to get back to that. But I can't tell you how many times I had to record the video. I mean, oh my goodness. And I'm sure for 3 minutes. And then when finally, after I've gone through maybe to like the 30th time recording the video, and I would talk to someone and they would say, well, it's okay. This could be better and that could be better. And I would just give the excuse, well, you don't know how long it takes. And it is so hard. And I kept running out of space. And, and those are very valid excuses. But ultimately, what is it that you want to do, Nicole?
Yep.
And if you say you want to do this, then you have to jump these hurdles. Yep. Yes, it's tiring. Yes, it's wearing you out. Yes, it's frustrated. But what are you going to do to make sure you get it done? And it's amazing when you stop allowing yourself to come up with these very valid reasons, how your mind will give you creative ways to work through some of the stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so you have that. You have that that those people that look that, okay, oh yeah, they just realize I'm not going to argue with her.
Yep.
I'm not going to argue with her. And I find that also, going back to the analysis paralysis, I think that when it sounds like I have very good reason to say, no, this isn't going to work. I have been guilty of using that reason. But then the other thing that's happening, and what I believe it is fear. The other thing that's happening is you have this burning drive and desire to, I have to do this. So you got fear over here, and you got this drive, and one of them is going to win. And right.
Oh, you speak my language.
and so you realize that at some point, okay, however I'm looking at this, it's not the only way to accomplish this. So then what am I going to do to accomplish it? No more excuses, no more reasons. Find a different way. And initially, it's kind of hard to get past that, because I think the excuses help us with our level of discomfort.
Yep.
One thing I know about myself is if I'm doing something that either I feel like I'm not prepared for or I haven't done before, is when the excuses come up, right? Yep. And so recognizing that.
Yep.
I think we talked about, last year we kind of talked about triggers, and it's kind of along the same line as when you identify your triggers, right?
Yes.
It's the same thing. When you identify the things that kind of hold you back, and then you learn how to prepare yourself. Well, how am I going to deal with this when I feel myself getting uncomfortable again with doing something I am not very experienced with yet?
Oh, absolutely.
So preparing yourself for those excuses that you make all the time is one of the ways to get around that.
All right. I love that. And that actually leads me into one of my other favorite subjects that goes right into all of this that you just happen to give me, is the having those fears. Because what I find I know myself, is when I start making those excuses, it is my brain coming up with all these ways to put the fear factor in me in some way and saying, you've never done this. Mm-hmm. You can't do it. You're not good enough for this. Just stop. I don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. Like, what is this? And I have become such a huge believer in, kind of like you said, finding a way through it. How else can I work through it? Because something I have learned is we try to make our way out of fear.
Oh.
We make every excuse in the book to find our way out of fear. And in all honesty, it just keeps coming. I don't know about you. It keeps coming, slapping me in the face and saying, no, you need to work through whatever you're afraid of. So figure out a way through it so you can move past this.
Yeah.
And like, if you try to work your way out of it, it's just going to come back and you're going to have to work on it later. So let's just do it now. So what is a big fear that has almost stopped you?
Yeah. I want to go back and comment on something that you said about going through fear, because I love that, Lauren. We seriously, I posted something on LinkedIn recently. One of my learning circle participants made a comment. She said, people who try to avoid problems never evolve.
Yep.
And fear is one of those emotions that we feel because we're trying to avoid something. We're trying to avoid that discomfort. We're trying to avoid the problems. But you just mentioned going through the fear instead of trying to avoid it, because guess what? That's that's part of the process. That's part of shaping you and molding you so that you can move closer to where you're trying to get to. So
Yeah.
when you're trying to avoid that fear, instead of working through it and facing it, you're avoiding the process that you need to work through to evolve.
Yes.
And so I love that you said that hey, if you keep trying to go around it, you're gonna find yourself right back at the same until you deal with it, right? And it's so true. I found that true for my life. But to answer your question about a fear that I face, so I grew up. My mom was a single, in a single parent household.
Okay.
I have 3 other siblings that I grew up with, oldest of 10 children. And my mom, I tell people that she has been the person who has set the example for me. She's the reason why I am very persistent, very tenacious. I can almost to the point of being stubborn. But she is just watching her example of getting up and going to work and having to take care of us all herself and making sure we had food. I mean, at one point, my mom caught the bus to take my siblings to daycare, and then she caught the bus all the way across town. She did this every day because she didn't have a car. And then she had to do it again, returning home, right? And she had to cook, and she had to clean, and she had to do everything to take care of us. And so at some point, and there were things that we didn't have, right?
Yeah.
At some point in my mind, in my life, some point in my adult years, I just formed this thing in my mind that my mom had to struggle so much. And I don't want to have to struggle. And I don't want my kids to have to endure whatever happens if I just say, hey, I'm going to go out and step out on a limb and just do this full fledged. I don't want my kids to have to struggle.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge barrier for me. And I remember for years, I mean, more than 10 years, I would talk to one of my friends about this, and she would just say, Nicole, you just got to do it. You just got to do it. And it was back to that excuse. But I don't want to put my family in the bad situation. Right? Kept going back to that. But that was a huge fear for me. It was a huge fear. And I think what I started moving into it. And Lauren, one of the things that I did, I want to mention this,
Yeah.
is that I went part-time on my job, which was scary in itself because that
Yep.
it
Yep.
cut my hours, so it cut my pay. But I think so I started moving in this thing that I knew I was supposed to be doing about 3 years ago. And then last year I went part-time on my job, which was scary. But I think what helped me, Lauren, was that COVID, there's so much sadness that came out of COVID, right?
Yep.
So much loss and so much that went on, so much fear.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that came out of it is it caused us to kind of evaluate what is really important. Not only what is important, what's possible. If you think about the fact that 3 years ago, you didn't have 80% of the companies with their people working from home, we would have never dreamt anything like that. And so I think COVID introduced to us there are ways to do different things. We just have to get creative. So for me, came the idea, well, maybe you can't do this full time yet, but you can go part time, right? And then just that, hey, life, we don't know how short life is. And so do I want to keep giving myself these excuses?
Absolutely. And that, yeah, I 100% agree with that. And, sometimes that's making those big decisions like that and moving through those fears is just part of that process, kind of like you said. And okay, I've got this, I figured this out. Now, what else can I make happen? Where can I move now?
Mhm.
And, even if it is taking those fears just a little bit at a time,
Yeah,
and, we don't want to bite off more than we can chew,
no.
but you still have to move through it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yes, I absolutely agree. Um, okay, well, let's wrap it up here. And thank you again for coming to chat with me with this. Um, where can everybody find you, contact you, or anything like that? Where can people get in touch?
So they can go out to my website, which is www.sc, that's Sam Cat, Calhoun, CALHOUN.com. You can contact me using the contact form on that website. Also, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can find my profile as Nicole, Nicole, C, that's my middle initial, and then Calhoun. So Nicole C. Calhoun on LinkedIn. And do me a favor, connect with me and send me a message and let me know that you found out about me through this podcast, through this recording. Let me know how you found me out there. But yeah, those are two ways that they can reach out to me. I share tips on career advancement and leadership development. And I also share different opportunities that come my way. So if you go out there and just kind of connect with me, you get to get in on that information as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the Go With Your Gut podcast. And remember to go with your gut and then keep on going.
Thank you.